Is it fixed? Yeah.
So hello, good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Advait Krishna A, the consulting head, the Consulting Analytics Club IT Guwahati, and I'll be host for today. But before we proceed to the session, I would like to take a moment to tell you all a little bit about our club and its work. The Consulting and Analytics Club at IIT Guwahati is a community that aims to help students start a successful career in management consulting and data analytics through learning, practice, and networking, seeking to impart or inculcate our vision among students and professionals. The club supports and organizes a wide range of initiatives and international events throughout the year. One of these initiatives is Summer Analytics, which is a free bootcamp course on data science and machine learning. Summer Analytics has catered to over 25,000 students over the past 5 years, helping aspirants understand core concepts and introduce them to the latest tools and algorithms used in the industry. As part of the course, we provide learning materials, content assignments, hackathons, as well as webinars. Anyone who would like to check out the course materials can do so by checking our website. Now, for today's session, we have Mr. Agash Bhatia, the co-founder and CEO of Internet Analytics. He's an alumnus of the MIT Sloan School of Management. He is also one of the co-founders of Zunga and have previously worked as senior product management as a principal consultant at Oracle Corporation of USA. So, over to you.
Thank you, Advait. Appreciate you having me here. And I'd like to thank everyone for being here. My name is Akash Bhatia, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Internet Analytics. And I'm here to talk to you about different things that we're doing about at Infinite Analytics and how data and everybody talks about an explosion of data today, but no one really knows what to do with all of that data. And Infinite Analytics comes into the picture, helping corporates, companies, the who's who of of corporate America, corporate India, helping them understand data and be able to unleash the value that data is supposed to unleash for them. So I'm going to just share my screen with you. Just give me a moment here. And I'm going to walk you through a bunch of things I wanted to talk about today. So just give me, I will just wait for a second once this thing loads. Great. Okay. So one of the biggest challenges, companies face today is that despite the data explosion, as I mentioned earlier, they have no idea about their customer behavior. They rely on highly qualitative methods and research groups to get some behavioral analytics, and even that is suspect because asking the right questions to a group of people to answer truthfully is a skill not many have, and everyone knows not everyone answers truthfully on a questionnaire for market research. In fact, as you can see over here, especially after the pandemic, about 20% of audiences just disappeared. People don't know how to get to their audiences. People have the consumer behavior has changed. Companies really have no idea how to reach out to the changed behaviors of these audiences. They do not know what is it that will help them get a grip on how consumer behavior has changed. Um, Unless, of course, they work with Infinite Analytics. We have created the world's second most powerful knowledge graph, and we really take pride in being the second most powerful knowledge graph. The first one is obviously Google with all its enormous resources, and obviously Google being Google. But we take pride in being second because it just makes us allows us to work harder So what exactly is a knowledge graph? So, growing up in small town India, we always had this neighborhood grandmom who really knew exactly where, who was meeting who was doing what kind of work they did, what kind of salary they got, what kind, so she was sort of the focal person who knew everything about the neighborhood. And so, cut to, 30 years later, Google decided to christen this as a knowledge graph, just with the amount of data that exists out there. So yeah, so we are the second most powerful knowledge graph in the world today. And how are we the second most powerful, right? So we process over 350 million users, billions of data points about these 350 million users every single day. They are processed, they are analyzed, and we are able to map what people do, get a sense of users' behavior, both online and offline. Typically agencies, companies, and everyone who talks about consumer behavior really rely on digital data, right? People, people really are able to, people really bring in data from social networks and say, oh yeah, now I understand consumer behavior. But let's face it, right? How many times, I mean, I've liked 10,000 things on Facebook and Instagram in the last 10 years. Does it really indicate my interest levels? Does it really indicate my behavioral aspects? I mean, friends have asked me to like something. I like something just because I have liked something on Facebook or Instagram. That it really doesn't really convert into my day-to-day behavioral aspects, right? So how do we do this, right? So we use 40 plus data sets. We've combined 40 plus data sets to sort of allow us to and combine them, analyze them, process them, allow us to understand behavioral aspects such as where do people visit, what do they do, how long do they stay, what are their brand affinities, what are their media habits, um, where do they fall in the prosperity index. I'm going to talk about the prosperity index in a little bit, but this is something extremely critical and extremely pertinent to what people do today. And sort of, and I mentioned, what kind of music they listen to, what are their media habits, and the list goes on, right? It just basically it goes into a rabbit hole of consumer behavior, and this goes on evolving every single day. Sherlock AI, our AI platform, is constantly learning because there is 350 million users that have been analyzed every single day. There is so much data that comes in. It's constantly learning newer attributes that people start to display, it starts to understand. So as a result of which, it is not only has a holistic view of consumer behavior online and offline, but it also sort of, you know, gives what we call a windshield view because it is on top of everything and attributes of consumer behavior. It knows what, it is able to analyze every single small change in consumer behavior. It starts to see a pattern. If the pattern is changing, it quickly picks on that pattern or a trend and starts to analyze it and starts to predict how consumers are going to behave. Which is why I mentioned, when companies today are not able to get a handle on consumer behavior post the pandemic lockdowns, we are, because we are analyzing users, we are analyzing consumer behavioral data at a minutest level that allows us to be able to um, uh, predict predict future consumer behavior, as a result of which you're able to give a windshield view to businesses. I mean, if you look at analytics so far, whether you're doing basic analytics on an Excel or a pivot table and stuff like that, or you're doing your analytics on your the leads that have come through your CRM and so on and so forth. They essentially all rear view mirror, right? They've all happened in the past, and now you're taking that data and saying, okay, now let me analyze what's happened in the past, and let me try to project my future with what is happening in the past. That doesn't work that way, right? I mean, whoever drives a car knows you can't be driving looking in the rearview mirror all the time. You need something that tells you what's coming at you, right? And that's what Sherlock AI, our AI platform, provides to companies. So just to kind of recap everything, what do we do, right? We understand consumer signals. I said we understand right from brand affinities, purchase patterns, spending potential. We're able to analyze these attributes. And then we are able to blend offline and online data to give a 360-degree view of what users do. Where do they live? What kind of commute they have? Imagine, I don't know how many of you are in Mumbai, but you typically spend about an hour, at least an hour in Mumbai traffic. What kind of commute are you going through? Are you going through a smoother commute but a longer commute, or are you going to a short commute but it's long because of just too much traffic, right? What kind of a mind frame are you going to be in? All of that gets into, I mean, that kind of detailed analysis is what we're able to do. And because of those analysis, what we are now able to do is um, also analyze purchase intent. How are people, what is their intent to purchase a particular product, right? We work with companies, global companies, and I'll talk about them, but all of them, actually, if you look at it, pretty much every company in the world is selling something, right? And everybody needs consumers. Everybody wants people to buy something, and and ultimately, all of these data insights all lead to, you could argue either which way. You could say, no, no, I want to understand consumer. But why do you want to understand consumer behavior? What is your end goal? Your end goal, especially for companies, is to sell a product to people. And so what we are able to do is analyze that purchase intent, and then be able to precisely target, or let me put it this way, target consumers very precisely, right? People who are really, really interested. Typically, companies go out there earlier, even before the digital explosion. People would go on television and say, "Okay, I'm going to broadcast it." Right? You don't know who is it hitting. Who are people really interested in your ads? Are people really interested in your products? Then came digital age, where people had a little bit of categorization. They can go down to the certain set of categories of people, but ultimately going down to people with purchase intent, people which show the ability to, they have the ability to purchase your product, they have the intent, and they are going to purchase your product. That's what we are able to get to. Actually, I'm going to show you some things. But before that, essentially the solutions that I think I must have talked, I just talked about it. Companies use our platform for a few things. And we focus on three areas. One is precision targeting for customer acquisition. Essentially, what we're saying is, as I just mentioned, there is, forget about the large companies, right? Even a neighborhood bakery wants to be able to understand people who in the in the bakery's neighborhood, understand who are those people, what are their habits, can they buy muffins from them, can they buy cakes from them, do they want bread every day, and what kind of people want bread every day, what kind of people purchase muffins on, say, every 15th of the month, and so on and so forth, right? So we are able to understand and then help that bakery precisely target those customers. And in a very anonymous fashion. It's not about knowing, that Advait, who's here, Advait likes muffins, and so let's target Advait. No, we don't know, or the bakery won't know who it is. In fact, even we don't know who it is. It's just a particular person out there who likes muffins and buys muffins every 15th of the month. Then lead scoring, right? So once you have targeted people, they've come through your system into your CRM. How do you score them? How do you understand whether they are, who is going to convert now, who's going to convert 3 months from now, who's going to convert 3 weeks from now, right? So that's what we are able to do. And the other one, which is sort of slightly more on a larger scale, companies like Tata Motors, companies like Coca-Cola, companies like L'Oreal, all of them essentially want to figure out network expansion. When I talk about network expansion, where do I open up the next showroom? Where do I open up my next salon? Where is there demand? Is there going to be cannibalization with my existing showrooms or my existing salons, and so on and so forth, right? So something that used to take 8 months earlier for companies, this is now being completely platformized. It's built into an algorithm. It takes into account everything, all the data sets that we use, and provides them something that used to take 8 months. They do it in a few days, right? So let me actually walk you through something. I'm going to stop sharing this. I was just going to give you a few success stories, but before the few success stories, I'm going to walk you through a very interesting use case. Just give me 1 second. Is this, yeah, it is visible now. Okay. So what you see over here is, I'm actually going to, you can see data sets that have been layered. I talked about how different data sets are being used and data sets that are being layered. But this is a very interesting use case. This is a very interesting case study. And I'm just going to walk you through. I'm going to remove the layers one by one to give you a sense, and then restart them. Essentially, this is for a alcohol company, a large global alcohol company, and they wanted to understand what the kind of people that visit alcohol stores in India, liquor shops in India, particularly in Mumbai, and what kind of people, what do they know about them? Particularly, you would know, right, that alcohol companies are not allowed to advertise on any medium other than just at the store. So how do you figure out what kind of people are coming to the store? While they're what kind of what's their, I talked about spending potential. Do they live in high prosperous areas? Do they live in low prosperous areas, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to take this case of shop number 5. So this particular, what you see over here is a map of Mumbai. We've mapped out 25 uh, alcohol stores all over Mumbai. Across the map, you'll see South Mumbai. There are these green spots are the alcohol stores. These are so you can see some of them in South Mumbai, some of them are Central Mumbai, some on the east side, some on the west side, right? So I'm going to take the shop number 5, which is really very central. As you can see, it's in Dadar, the area of Mumbai. If you've been to Mumbai, this is where Shivaji Park is, where Sachin Tendulkar used to practice. That's where he grew up. And so this is right opposite Shivaji Park. We're going to take this particular shop, and I'm going to show you in the month of January, in the first week of January, what kind of, in 2021, right after New Year's Eve, what kind of people showed up at shop number 5, right? Typically, what you see in India, especially in large cities like Mumbai, um, people who visit the alcohol shop, they all visit sort of in, it's a 2 kilometer radius. People will only visit shops that are close by to their homes or their office locations, pick up their alcohol and go home, right? Or they will order on the phone and they will come and deliver. And even that radius is, they don't deliver beyond a 2 to 3 kilometer radius, max 5 kilometers, right? So this is something that we were able to see. I'm going to show you. Uh, let's show this. You see these sort of arcs that have come up, right? These arcs are nothing but people who have come to this shop, the arc, and then they've traveled their home location, right? So the end of that, so it starts from shop number 5, and wherever the arc ends, that each arc is a user, and wherever the arc ends is the home location of the user, right? And so what we are able to do is using a lot of our data sets. In this case, particularly, it's cell phone data that comes to us anonymized, of course. We're able to look at people who came to the store. What is their so the platform computes from 9 p.m. till 9 a.m. If that cell phone location is a particular or whatever is the lat long of that location, that becomes the home location, right? So you can see over here, pretty much all over Mumbai, people are coming to this particular store. Now, very intriguing, because I just told you the behavior is basically a 2 kilometer radius. This is coming from all over Mumbai. In fact, all the way from Panvel, which is in New Mumbai. Uh, Pretty much everywhere people are coming to the store and purchasing their alcohol. So that's one very peculiar behavior. Now let's see. Uh, you will argue that, oh no, this is one part of the audience. The other part of the audience is essentially people who call, get their alcohol delivered. They call in and get their alcohol. And in Mumbai, it is legal right now. You can order it online, and then they will come home and deliver it to you. So you say, oh right, well, how do I figure out how many are getting delivered, right? Where all are they delivering? So what we were able to do is, or the platform was able to analyze people who worked at the store. So people who were there at the shop number 5 from say 11 a.m. or 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. in the night. Those were obviously either the shop owner and people who worked at the store, and then their movement through the day. What kind of places did they go to and came back to the store? As a result, we analyzed that those were all the delivery boys. And this amoeba-like thing you see is the delivery path and the delivery areas that these people have delivered at. And you'll see it's all over the place again. It's all over Mumbai, all the way from North Mumbai to South Mumbai, East, all the way to outside of Mumbai as well. So it's pretty much the same behavior that we're seeing. Now, one last thing I want to show you over here before I talk about multiple things on this is I talked about, one aspect that people wanted to understand was, how prosperous and can they afford? What kind of places do they visit? And I mean, what kind of prosperity do they show, right? Now, what we have done is we've broken down all of India, all the major cities, tier one, tier two, tier three cities. We've broken down each of these cities into 150-meter blocks. And we've used multiple data sets to analyze the prosperity or the prosperity of those 150-meter blocks. So you could be looking at real estate prices, you could be looking at shopping trends in that area, you could be looking at rental rents in that area, kind of cars in that area, the kind of phones in that area, and so on and so forth, right? So what you see over here is you'll see these different shades of sort of green and gray. The darker the shade, the greater is the prosperity. So you can, if someone's here from Mumbai, it's common knowledge that this western side of Mumbai around the sea is what is more prosperous, right? From Kolaba to Worli to Bandra and all places up north. And it's sort of it kind of gets validated. You'll see that all of these places are each 150-meter block. You'll see people coming from prosperous locations into shop number 5, right? So why is it? Um, why is it that people are from all over Mumbai coming to this location? Why is it that this particular location is showing such different behavior, an outlier behavior? And even the deliveries are all over the place as well. So a few Google searches about this particular store, we found out that this particular store offers a 25% discount on alcohol, which is even greater than duty free. Everybody buys from duty free because it's cheaper, but this was even cheaper than duty free. So as a result of which, 25% is a huge discount. You're getting 1/4 of the price shaved off, and so which is the reason why everyone was buying alcohol from this particular store. A very interesting behavior. And our client was also able to flip this around and then look at people who came from less prosperous areas. Where did they shop for their alcohol? Now that we know that people came from to this particular store came from prosperous areas, where were people coming from these white areas? Where were they shopping for alcohol? And so those analysis sort of help them understand what kind of alcohol do they want to store cheaper beer over here, or you want to have high-end beer in certain locations and stores and so on and so forth, right? So this is something that I wanted to show. I'm going to stop sharing this once more and get back to sharing the slide. And in the meanwhile, I don't know if anybody has any questions. You could probably, if there is a chat or something, um, uh, please, or keep your questions handy for this. Sorry, there is a question. How much data do you need to make these predictions? I'm assuming you need a long history of data on. Well, we've been at it for the last 8 years, and like I said, we process over 350 million users every single day. And so, yes, it takes time to build first the ontology, the entire infrastructure, to be able to take all of these different data sets and then process them. And then obviously the IP, the algorithms that you're building, there are certain things that we really do well. Some of our guys were able to find a correlation between air pollution data and and sale of automobiles and two-wheelers in those locations, right? So so it each and every correlation that comes out builds on to the algorithm starts to get smarter and smarter. So yeah, so let me just quickly walk you through this. A few success stories. I will make this very quick. I want to open this up for questions and keep it a little more interactive. We work with Tata Motors. I mentioned we were able to actually help them. I don't know if anyone of you has been following Tata Motors, but they've recently displaced Hyundai as the number 2 car company in India. They are the number 2 OEM manufacturer after Maruti, and quickly now giving Maruti a run for their money as well. And one of the reasons, obviously, because their cars have gotten a lot better, they're amazing cars. But one of the reasons they've been also been able to do is we've been able to reduce their customer acquisition cost by 75%. And the way we did this is the way they used the platform was basically analyze all the showrooms of their competitors. So not only do they look at the Tata Motors showrooms across all of India, but also looked at Maruti, Hyundai, Honda, all the other competitor showrooms, and then were able to analyze people who went to those showrooms. I just showed you how people who walked into shop number 5, where all did they come from and stuff like that. So similar kind of analysis. They looked at people and their behavior and started to target them. So anyone who walked into a Maruti showroom would then sort of get a ad on their Facebook from Tata Motors saying, "Hey, do you want to try out Tata Motors? If you walk in today and get a whatever some discount or whatever free sort of thing." As a result of which, people started to visit more and more Tata Motor showrooms and did the test drives and essentially bought the cars. So their CAC or customer acquisition cost was brought down by 75%. We were also able to help them analyze places um, of sort of interest and demand where people had demand for cars and for their cars or their competitor cars, allowing them to expand their dealerships. As a result of which, we sort of saved about 5,000 man hours or field team hours for them in establishing those dealership locations. So yeah, so that's one thing. I actually want to show you this one more if we have the time once we get through a bit of this presentation. We work with Costa Coffee to understand, Costa Coffee had a problem essentially understanding people coming into, they've been killed by Starbucks in India. So they had no idea about consumers walking into either their stores or Starbucks. And sort of they wanted our help to understand this part, understand consumer behavior, and what we were, and help them understand where to open up their coffee locations. I'll quickly jump to this. Flow Mattress, it's a startup that does direct to consumer mattresses, sells direct to consumer, and typically their agency would give them a 5x return on their ad spends. What we were able to do within 3 months of them working with us actually increase their return on their ad spends by 39 times. That's 39 times. That's 3,900% increase in ROI. That's the amount of impact we were able to get. So we've got some good people. Mr. Mahindra, we help his company Epic TV also, and Kimberly Clark is also one of our clients. In fact, just a snapshot of some of the clients that we have today, from Pfizer to Tata Motors to L'Oreal. A lot of these companies are, and pretty much every company is using our platform. And as I mentioned that we believe in data ethics. We are compliant with GDPR and CCPA compliances by design and not by accident. This is the way we roll. This is the way we work with everyone, and we have a strict policy against first party data and we only work with anonymized data. So very quickly, the kind of insights that we get and the audiences that we get for our clients are they are platform agnostic, right? They can the same clients, the same audiences that clients are able to find, like Tata Motors, able to find these audiences who visit Maruti showrooms, right? Um, they can be used, the same data sets, the same audience sets can be used across these platforms without having to change anything. Typically when you, I don't know if anyone's run campaigns on digital platforms, but you work with Facebook and you say, oh, Facebook gives you its own set of users, and then you go to Google and you create your ad campaigns, and Google gives you its own set of users. There may be an overlap, but you have no idea about it. In this case, when you work with Sherlock AI, our platform, you know exactly who this thing is going to go to, right? So the million people that you want to target, they're the same million people on Facebook, they're the same million people on Google, they're the same million people on Snap, and so on and so forth, right? And different aspects, geospatial data gives us, as I mentioned, the ability to understand where people are visiting. Mobility data the kind of places of interest of or the points of interest that what we call POI. Geospatial data allows us to understand what places are people visiting. Mobility data allows us to understand how people are moving about. And then there are all other, understanding user trends, purchase behavior, different kind of data sets. Very quickly, that's the team. That's me out there and my co-founder Puru. We started this company right out of MIT, where I was completing my MBA, and so was Puru. And we were encouraged by my professor, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who's the inventor of the World Wide Web. He's also one of the first advisors, investors in infinite analytics. And then as we started to grow, Mr. Tata came on board, and the rest is sort of history. And that's us. I'm going to pause here for a second. I have a bunch of things I want to show you, but first let me answer some questions. Do you have any questions for us, organizers? Oh, what kind of audiences can companies create? Okay, well, I'm going to have to share my screen again. I actually have this. Give me one moment. Or you could create, I would say infinite um, kind of audiences, but here's sort of what we already have. And sort of what we see our clients sort of build as well. And so you have all these kind of, in fact, actually, one of the audience segments that what we were able to find for our for Tata Motors was what we found was that people who visit fine dining restaurants and have visited a showroom are more likely to convert. And so one of the audiences that um, the OEM manufacturers can really look at are people who visit, sort of regular, all of the people who visit fine dining restaurants or regular dine out and takeaways. Then you have all of these. I mean, and the list is endless. I mean, you could build as many as you want. As and the beauty of the platform is that it's any new data set that comes in, gets added very quickly. So you could start to build on more of these data sets, more and more of these data sets. Yeah, it's infinite. Yeah. Any other question? Do you also conduct surveys? So the question is, do you also conduct surveys to get the data, or is it only online sourcing? No, actually, there are no surveys. Surveys are very qualitative. We believe in quantitative data only. Our data is not sourced just online. Our data comes from multiple sources. Like I said, cell phone data. We have points of interest, which is map data. We also are able to, we work with government data, so data from census, from electoral rolls. I mentioned about data from satellite. I don't know if I mentioned this, but we work with satellite companies to get satellite data on urban areas, see how they are expanding. Um, yeah, and the list is endless. So it's not just online sourcing, it's just different areas. We work with certain life science companies to understand a little bit more on the health side of things. The list is endless, but we don't conduct surveys. Surveys are, as I mentioned earlier, very qualitative, and you cannot put 100 people in a room and do a survey and extrapolate that to 1.3 billion people in India. So the question is, so if you come across a scenario where there is a customer about whom you have no prior information, what do you do in this case, and how do you prevent bias? Good question. Well, we have no idea about customers, right? In the sense, like I said, we're not here to understand every. I don't know if Akshay has gone to a location, or Adair has gone to a location, or Mansi has gone to another location, right? We have no idea. So any customer that we are analyzing right now, or we can go back in time. We can actually go back 3 years as well and understand whether some of these people who show a similar behavior, and then we are able to probabilistically come up with whether it's the same person or not. But we have, in fact, in every customer, in every user, we have no prior information. It's a new user all the time. So to prevent bias, I don't know what kind of bias you might be thinking about, but like I said, every user is a new user, so um, there is no bias towards having data of users from the past, and being able to predict better than those that we have no data about. Do we get information on psychographics and what kind? We actually analyze and come up with psychographic information, right? So I talked to you about, what are the brand affinities, media habits, what kind of music they listen to, what kind of food they eat. All of this stuff is what we are able to build. And then, like I said, the list is endless. And you could look at, for example, we work with a large pharmaceutical company in the world, and they had, for example, wanted to understand smokers. They wanted to um, understand. They have a smoking cessation drug, and not a nicotine patch, but it's actually a drug. And so wanted to understand people who smoke, and people who are ready to quit, because every smoker says they want to quit, right? But are they really ready to quit right now? Everybody knows that not everybody quits. So what they were able to do is, using our platform, they were able to identify um, commercial buildings across, let's say, Mumbai. So all the commercial buildings in Mumbai, and they were able to look at cell phone data and understand people who would take 15-minute breaks, in before lunch, after lunch, 15-minute breaks, walk out of the building, but be in close vicinity of the building with a few other people as well. So that behavior became, okay, these could be smokers, and then they would start to look at what kind of other behavioral characteristics they show if they went to, let's say, a maternity clinic. So they had a life changing event happening in that case, which meant that they were really ripe to quit smoking because they might be having a child coming their way. Or if they were yoga enthusiasts, then obviously they are more focused on their health. So the kind of information that, or the kind of messaging that ought to go to them to quit smoking, that can be a little different than the ones going to the maternity clinic, right? So that kind of information is also something companies are able to get from our platform. Any other questions? Kiran says, which data do you think has more weightage to get customers choose a new brand? It's very uh, can't predict. Sometimes it's the visitation patterns that allow us to figure out. Sometimes, as I said, we've even found pollution data to air pollution data to figure out which, what kind of consumers prefer what kind of product. Ultimately, the brand and the quality of the brand also matters, right? So, but what we are looking at is people who have the ability and have the intent, have the interest, and how can you get them to look at your client's products? Ultimately, I mean, if Tata Motors wasn't if their cars weren't that good, then no matter what you did, people would not choose the brand. The fact that the cars are really good now um, is making a big difference. So you can take the horse to the water, but you cannot get them to drink that water, right? As the saying goes, or something like that. Same way, right? Your product has to be great for people to buy it, but you need to get the people to try a product, and that's where our AI platform has played a huge role. Rahul says, what are the tools Infinite Analytics majorly uses to analyze data? Well, a lot of them are internally built. But to give you a sense, we are typically a Python heavy organization. So it's Python and a little bit of Java, NoSQL databases. We in fact actually even use MySQL databases. So it's all a mix. And as new technologies keep coming in, we keep adding all of that new stuff to it. But um, mostly it's Python heavy. Saurabh says our main sources related to offline data gathered by mobile networks, offline visits, map data, or do we study their online activity in terms of what kind of content they're consuming online? Both. Saurabh, that's both. So cell phone data allows us to get um, the offline data, right? What is the user doing when the user is not on Facebook or not online, right? Um, you are able to understand their behavior, you're able to understand the places they visit, um, you're able to understand all of that offline world behavior, right? And then online kind of allows us to understand what kind of content they consume. Are they consuming Times of India? Or are they consuming something on Daily Hunt? If it's Daily Hunt, then probably the the content they're consuming is vernacular versus a Times of India, which is all in English, right? So that also allows us to understand whether the person, for example, if Tata Motors wanted to reach out to certain kind of people, then do they talk to them in Hindi or do they talk to them in English? Or do they talk to them in any other regional language, right? So it's all the sources give us a lot of insights. In certain cases, the cell phone data gives us insights. In certain cases, online data gives us insight. In a lot of cases, actually, sensors and electoral rolls also give us a lot of insights as well. Arnav says, what kind of audiences can companies create using Sherlock AI? Arnav, as I mentioned earlier, um, it's limitless. It's infinite. That's why we call infinite analytics. You could come up with all kinds of audiences. You want, edtech companies are able to understand people who are, and it's not just people, right? Kindergarten kids really don't get online. So parents who are interested in getting their kindergarten kids some tuitions or some online classes. So edtech companies have been using us to find those kind of parents. I talked to you about our one of our pharmaceutical companies. I talked to you about Tata Motors. I talked to you about our L'Oreal. L'Oreal is a client. They want to understand people who are going to go in the next 15 days, going to go to a salon and get their hair done, right? So and get whatever treatment. So they could. I mean, the list is literally infinite. Pratt says, with this huge amount of data, can companies identify a specific person and his or her behavior? Very good question, which is why I was mentioning earlier as well that we are GDPR and CCPA compliant. We do not, we are not, we cannot unravel the identity of a user. I mean, otherwise this could be used for snooping, right? So there is absolutely no way you could identify the user. The way companies reach out, which is perhaps going to be a next question. If you don't know who the user is, then how the hell do you get to them and get them to try out a Tata Motors car? Uh, the way this works is that the audiences that we form, um, that we do not, whose identities we don't know, um, they are sort of broken down in such a way that um, Facebook and Google understand those audiences. They understand who each of those users are and what their profiles are. And they are the ones who do the targeting. So we do not do it. And once we give these audiences to Facebook and Google and all the other platforms, they do not share with you who those audiences, who that belongs to. And so it's a sort of a very good sort of system where nobody has the identity. So Facebook doesn't know why this is being used for. We don't know who they are, and sort of there is a um, really a good wall between the identity of the person um, and what we are dealing with. So you can't have political or governments tracking someone. You cannot. You just cannot use it for this. Which is why we have very strict policies about the kind of data that we want to use. Shantanu says, recently I watched all major companies. Sorry, I lost the question. There were two questions, Shantanu. Yeah. I watched on building the ecosystem like GeoMart, Sim, TV, etc. Now Viacom also have digital rights. So what's the question? Does building such a help companies in understanding consumer behavior better? Yes, of course. Of course it does, right? Google built their whole ecosystem based on consumer behavior, right? Um, um, so yes, of course it does. Ultimately, it is a question of, do you know how to build it, and what can you do to understand consumer behavior better? You could completely get into a rabbit hole of using only one data set or one data source and think that that is the most important data source. But truth is that, not a single, I mean, it's unidimensional. What you want to do is get all the dimensions of a person's life, and which is why companies come to us, and our platform that has been built. But yeah, I mean, they're all building their own thing. Um, Good luck to them. Akshay says, are characteristics like mood a variable for understanding consumer behavior? And if yes, then how do you source this data without surveys or direct interaction with customers? Well, this is arrived at data, Akshay. A mood is very, very subjective. So I don't know how you can quantify that. But we try to get hard data about behavior, right? So if someone goes daily for a morning run, then you know that the person is the mood for being sort of healthy. Someone goes to the liquor store every day, then you know that the person's mood after 6 p.m. is about getting drunk, right? So the data, we don't do surveys, and so everything else is arrived at and probabilistic, in terms of the behavioral aspects, but the data itself is very deterministic. So you could the hard data in terms of visitation, the hard data in terms of the apps that have been used or content that has been watched. All of that is hard data. That's deterministic, but then everything else is derived and probabilistic. Vivek says how we can tackle the problem of ignorance of feedback of products. Uh, Sorry, can you elaborate? I didn't kind of get the question. What is ignorance of feedback? Oh, you mean feedback, ignore feedback on products? You mean the feedback on, like, say, Amazon, and what kind of feedback people are giving? I mean, that's not something. I mean, that's human behavior. If people want to ignore feedback, they will ignore feedback. Um, can't do. But which is why we're looking forward to this hackathon. If you think you can hack that problem for us, then feel free to do that. I would be happy to see something like that come through. The next question is, what are some of the interesting features you guys are working on and some challenges you guys face? Okay. Yeah. So a lot of, I mean, challenges are plenty, right? Let me actually show you something else. I'm going to share this with you. I sort of found, I mean, I decided at the last minute to do something like this. And so even my team is not aware that I'm going to be doing this. But let me look at this, right? We come up with correlations. I hope you can all see my screen. Um, I'm just going to do a quick check. Yes, you can. Okay. So this is something we've been working with NBA, the National Basketball Association. And what we were able to do for them is, across their, what we were able, okay, let me put it this way. I'm going to get very quick into this. What we call predictors of behavior, right? So essentially, let's look at this. Um, then how do you predict fandom, right? And this is the hard part, right? How do you, and what I'm getting to. So people who are going to participate in this hackathon, you should pay attention to this. So, when someone says, how do I love Coca-Cola, or let's put it this way, right? Everyone in this world loves Coca-Cola, or everyone likes Michael Jordan, right? So when someone says, or when someone shows signals of liking Michael Jordan, how big a predictive power is that? as opposed to someone who says they like Iman Shumpert, who's also a basketball player, right? So Michael Jordan at that time, when we were working with the NBA, had 26.6 million fans versus Iman Shumpert, who had 800,000 fans on their social media. Right now, this has increased quite a bit. This was like 3 or 4 years back. But how do you predict that if someone is a fan of Michael Jordan, is a bigger fan of basketball or NBA than someone who's a fan of Iman Shumpert? Let me put it this way, actually, bring it more to India, right? If someone says they're a fan of Sachin Tendulkar, let me put it, everyone is a fan of Sachin Tendulkar in India, right? But when someone says that they're a fan of Dhaval Kulkarni, who until recently was only Mumbai Indians player until he came on to the national scene. But someone who says they're a big fan of Dhaval Kulkarni, are they a bigger fan of cricket than someone who says, which is pretty much everyone who says that I'm a fan of Sachin Tendulkar? Because pretty much everyone in India, whether they play cricket or not, whether they follow cricket or not, is a fan of Sachin Tendulkar, right? So those are the aspects that we try to find. What is the how is fandom how is fandom calculated, right? So what is more important? So for NBA to reach out to NBA fans, or reach out to people who are really feel very strongly about NBA, is it more efficient to target fans of Iman Shumpert than target fans of Michael Jordan, right? So, and in this case, the answer is Iman Shumpert, because then it's a very focused. They are definitely interested in NBA than someone who is a Michael Jordan fan, right? So similarly, what we were able to do for one of the things is, let's say, top music predictors, right? So in this case, um, as it shows up, right? So what we were able to do is figure out what are the top predictors of NBA fandom across music world, right? So basically, if you see these predictors trends over here, so essentially what this is saying is that people who follow Kendrick Lamar, I hope you can read this, Kendrick Lamar, um, what is the probability that they will, if NBA were to target them with NBA related messaging, what is the probability that they would convert into an NBA fan? So the probability is 12.9% versus Wiz Khalifa, who is at 12.8%, right? So you're not, now you're saying, NBA is NBA. Anybody who's a fan of NBA, he's already a fan. But now you want to bring in people who show tendencies to become NBA fans and want to come in, right? And so who should they reach out to? So in this case, our recommendation to NBA was reach out to Kendrick Lamar, Wiz Khalifa, Lil Wayne, all of these guys, Drake. And I don't know if you remember, but 3 years back, NBA played a game in Mumbai, and just before that, actually, so the teams, this was presented to the NBA in New York, and one of the teams that traveled, which is Sacramento Kings, they traveled with Drake, the musician, which is number 4 over here, with them. The team traveled with Drake because they realized from this analysis that people in India who are Drake fans have a larger tendency to convert into an NBA fan, right? And I think 15 days before the NBA game actually happened, Wiz Khalifa performed in India. NBA, I don't know if it was NBA who brought him, but he performed in Mumbai just 15 days before the NBA game, right? So you can see the impact that we are able to bring, right? So that is something that what we are really looking to do is get these correlations out. What we want to do is what kind of data sets, what kind of correlations we can pull out. There was this other correlation I talked about. People who go to fine dining restaurants are more likely to purchase a Tata Motors car, right? So such kind of correlations is something that we're really looking for in or trying. We constantly try to um, pull out such correlations, and that's one of our challenges as well. How do you figure this out, right? The second one being, um, how many more data sets can we add? In the sense, as in we can add as many. It's infinite number of data sets, but can we? What other data sets are we missing right now in these 40 plus data sets that we already have? Can we look at more data sets that we have not looked at yet? And what kind of signals can we get from those data sets? That's we scrape the web, we look at relevant websites, and a whole bunch of other websites that we crawl. And I talked to you about uh, offline data. We talked to you about online data. We talked to you about data that's available from government. What else, right? One of the things we've looked at is for our sort of vehicle or sort of automobile manufacturer customers is RTO data, right? Wherever we can get RTO data, we can try and get that as well. So we get a sense of what kind of cars are being sold, what kind of commercial vehicles are being sold. So are there any data sets that we don't know of that we should be looking at? And the third one essentially um, we've recently partnered with ICICI Bank. ICICI has taken all our APIs and plugged it into the InstaBiz app, which is their business banking app for small and medium businesses. And in fact, we've launched our Sas platform as well. So all of this until now was all APIs, but now we've sort of put a UX around it. In fact, let me just share that with you as well. And just really quickly show this to you. Um, Let me know. Yeah. So this is sort of the this is sort of our our SaaS platform that people can log into. Companies can log into, build their own audiences. You could start with the prosperity or the well-being index. This is the well-being index for Mumbai, and you could start to build your own audience and create a new audience report and sort of a thing. So we've got all of this that companies are now starting to use, but what we want to do is if you guys can help us streamline the user experience if someone's interested in looking at how the data architecture is and looking at how the data flows, then let's sort of help us with making it even easier. Um, you know, we are we are sort of we are all geeks over here. We're all math guys. We're a little bit UX challenged and creative challenged. We use our left brain. We don't use our right brain. So anyone out there who wants to use their right brain and come, help us with streamlining the process as well. Yep. So Vaishnavi says, why companies are trying to manipulate us into consuming more. We are good off AI too. Why rush? I don't think anyone's trying to manipulate. I think it's about finding the right one. I mean, you would not want to be bombarded with irrelevant products, right? When I turn on the TV today, and I am, if I may use this word, I'm pissed off because I'm not interested in half of those ads. Um, but they still show up, right? And they're irritating. A lot of times they're irritating. I don't think anyone's trying to manipulate you. No one's playing mind games, right? They're trying to get to, you're showing interest. Yeah, here's my product. You may be interested in that. I don't think manipulation is the right word, but yes, there is a lot of data available, and um, companies are trying to understand how best they can use this data to inform people and get in front of them. I don't know if you remember that the movie Minority Report. This was way back, I think about 15 years back. Tom Cruise movie. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. As Tom Cruise is walking past a train station, the billboards actually change and talk to him, right? And it's all very very personal to him in terms of what he would be interested in. And I think we're getting there. That singularity part of the movie with real life is coming up, and we're all partly adding to it, right? The more data we consume, the more data we put out about ourselves. Companies are going to mind that. I don't know if that's a great answer, Vaishnavi, for you, but I don't think anyone's manipulating. I think what people are doing is just analyzing data. Saurabh says, are there any case studies which I can go through or use cases where Sherlock can help and how? Yes, plenty. Talk to, I'm just going to share the screen for our contact information. Talk to Sabrish, who is here on the call right now, and he will get you all of those. Here it is. Great. Any other? We are pretty much at the hour right now. So, um, organizers, any other questions or anything you might have?
Hello, sir.
Okay. Um,
So I think there are no more
yeah,
questions. Yeah.
yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for your time. It was very insightful, and we got to learn a lot about consumer insights and how it helps companies. Oh, yeah, it seems we have a new question actually. Wait,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, what was that?
No,
Okay,
we actually
Hriday.
got a new question. Yeah.
Hriday, it is highly likely that a new startup or an infant company is not able to cope up with the suggestions based on Sherlock's predictions. How the suggestions of Sherlock-based analysis are molded to boost that company's growth. Um, Let me put it this way, right? Startups are constantly looking for, I mean, new startups are obviously looking for audiences that they want to reach out to, right? And how do you compete with, let's say, if you are a um, um, new energy drink company, how do you compete with a Coca-Cola, right? So you have to first obviously best define what kind of customers that you want to reach out to. And then Sherlock takes over and starts to understand those behaviors and tries to understand those audiences. And I have many instances. I mean, like I said, the D2C mattress company, which was Flow Mattresses, 39 times return on ad spends. That is unbeatable, right? I mean, they literally took away business from their competitor, which was WakeFit, I think, um, because they were able to get that kind of return on their ad spends. So, in fact, if you are a small startup, you should come to Sherlock, primarily because you are competing with the biggest guys and they have the biggest monies, right? Our thing is not about the money, it's about the right audiences. You could throw a lot of money and say, I want to do a, I mean, you see all these big startups with a lot of money that they raise from VCs doing all these television ads. Why are they doing all of these television ads? Because they want to get more and more customers. But are they doing that? No, it's mass broadcast. It's terrible, right? It's more like a brand awareness campaign. What startups really want is revenue coming in through the door. And when you want revenue coming through the door, you want people who will really, really convert, right? And that's where you should be using Sherlock. I hope that answered your question today. Great. Super. Well, thank you for having me here. Everyone who is listening to this, I hope this was informative. And thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Great.
I would like to express my gratitude to all the dignitaries and delegates present for the webinar and for the contribution to make this webinar a great success.
Thank you, Adbet.
Thank you, sir. It was
Super.
so.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye bye now.